On February 22nd, 2022, Destiny 2 players were invited to explore a throne world, a realm where one being creates the rules, and everyone who enters must play by these rules. Throne worlds require immense power to fashion, power that few beings other than hive gods wield. Every structure, every color, every piece of grass in a throne world is formed by its ruler. That day, we explored the throne world of the god of cunning and deceit herself, Savathûn. We entered the den of a god, praying it didn't swallow us whole. Savathûn was not always a god, however. She was born a krill, a weak creature with a lifespan of 8 to 10 years. She was named Sethona, sister to the krill beings Zero and Arash. The three sisters lived on Fundament, a nearly inhospitable planet with acid rain and cannibalistic creatures. Sethona's sister, Zero, describes our living conditions in the first book of Sorrow, titled Predators. The Fundament is very large. We are the smallest things in it. If you don't understand something, it will probably kill you. This entire world is deadly to us. Sethona and her sisters knew that they were born at the bottom of the food chain. They were devastatingly aware of their weak, crumbling bodies. Thus, when the three were offered eternal life, it was hard to refuse. 5 worm gods discovered the sisters in their plight and presented a deal. If they allowed the worm gods to plant their newborn larvae in their fragile bodies, the 3 krill will achieve eternal life and the strength to overpower oncoming threats. On one condition. As recorded in the 9th Book of Sorrow, the worm demands, "You must obey your nature forever. In your immortality, Arash, you may never cease to explore and inquire for the sake of your children. In your immortality, Zero, you may never cease to test your strength. In your immortality, Sethona, you may never abandon cunning. If you do, your worm will consume you. And as your power grows, O princes, so will your worm's appetite. But we offer eternity, Arash. We offer you a chance at the universe. Would you deny your people infinity?" The 3 krill, formerly born to simply breed and to die, accept the deal. They're each infested with a worm that demands bloodshed to satisfy its hunger, and if left unsatisfied, the worm's hunger will turn inward and devour their bodies. In return, Sethona, Zero, and Arash all become powerful beings known as hive gods. Sethona reveals her motives for accepting this deal quite explicitly in the 6th Book of Sorrow. "We have to dive," Sethona said, following the whispers of her worm familiar. "In the world beneath us, in the metallic depths, I hope we may find what we need most. More time. More life." Sethona desires self-preservation above all. She does not kill because she enjoys it. She just wants to live. Later in Destiny 2's story, Sethona adopts the name Savathûn, becoming a hive god bent on using trickery to gain power and interfere with plans. She obeys to ever-increasing demands for blood, required by her worm. Her 2 siblings, Zero and Arash, also embrace their new identities, becoming Zivu-Arath and Oryx, respectively. The 3 siblings converge goals, decimating entire species in order to satisfy their worms. The 24th Book of Sorrow, titled The Scream, lists their triumphs. "Savathûn, Zivu-Arath, my siblings, we are betrayed. We will never live eternal. Our might shatters entire species. We inhale the smoke of their burning. This is our compact with the worm. The worm makes us mighty. But as we wield this might, our worm's hunger expands. If we fail to feed it, it will devour us from within. We have exterminated 306 worlds." The 23rd Book of Sorrow states that the siblings eliminated 18 species at the time the book was written. Out of morbid obedience, the 3 hive gods commit mass genocide to ensure their immortality. No creature's life matters more than their own. She interferes with the plans of the Guardians, causing the beast Riven to curse the Dreaming City, as well as possessing the Guardian Osiris, and infiltrating the safety of the tower. Savathûn is bound to her nature, forced to be cunning, lest she be devoured. Her brother Oryx, formerly Arash, speaks of this tension in the 48th Book of Sorrow. I am Oryx, the first navigator, the taken king. Ayat, let me be what I am, because to be anything else would be fatal. If Savathûn and her siblings want to live, they must spill blood. And spill blood they do. In the 6th mission of the Witch Queen campaign, titled The Cunning, the Guardian discovers a strange addition to Savathûn's throne world. Deep in her realm, Savathûn constructs a temple dedicated to Sethona, her younger self. In the center of the temple lies a statue, depicting Sethona cradling her worm familiar, almost like a child. In this mission, the character Ikora interprets the structure as more than a temple. She states, "So Savathûn built a mausoleum for her younger self, then abandoned it. It seems as if the hive god of cunning and deception, capable of erasing species from existence with ease, mourns." In her throne world, Savathûn also constructs a mausoleum in memory of her deceased brother Oryx, which makes sense. Yet, in that same space, she builds a tomb for her past self, who is also dead. Savathûn can never go back and become Sethona. Savathûn is predator, Sethona was prey. Even so, she mourns for the life she once had, a life when she could become anything she wanted. Due to her desire for eternal life, Savathûn closed the door behind her, preventing her from ever experiencing a natural life cycle. She is forced to live with the repercussions of her choices, ever cunning, ever killing, shackled to her identity. In Season of the Lost, Savathûn comes to a grave realization. Her worm screams for more blood than she can supply. In the 24th Book of Sorrow, her brother Arash describes this crisis. "Soon, my siblings, we will be so mighty, and our worms so hungry, that not with all our might could we possibly feed them. And we will be devoured. What can we do?" Savathûn fears that despite the ever-growing pile of corpses in her wake, it is not enough to satiate her worm. To avoid death once more, she turns to her greatest enemy, the Guardians. She makes a deal, proclaiming that if the Guardians remove the worm from her body, she will return the captive Osiris. In time, her enemies are successful, extracting the worm and freeing Savathûn from endless torment. This freedom does not last for long, however. There will be heavy spoilers ahead for the Witch Queen campaign, so skip to 10:11 if you'd like to avoid spoilers. In removing her worm, Savathûn also loses the strength the worm gods bestowed upon her, the capacity to gain power over her own fragile flesh, the power to make of it as she wills. As a result, she starts to die. Savathûn is brought face to face with her own mortality. When confronted with death, she crawls to the Traveler, giver of light and life. "I've chased you for a long time," she mutters, falling to her knees. First as an enemy, then as a collector, and finally, now, a supplicant. She comes to the Traveler to beg for her eternal goal: more time, more life. Savathûn knows this may be the end. At this moment, she is much like Sethona, powerless and stripped of the ability to do anything more than wait for death to take her. This moment sticks with me because, all things considered, she has already won. She obeyed the commands of the worm gods, remained cunning her whole life, and coerced her enemies into removing her worm. Yet, here she lies, supine at the foot of the god of her enemies, begging for one more breath. She may have achieved many goals throughout her life, including conquest, glory, and dominion over entire planets, but she failed to secure the one prize that really mattered: life. In the end, Savathûn isn't able to save her own skin. She dies on a rock outcropping miles beneath the traveler. Her own strength is not enough to save her from her deepest fear. Savathûn did everything in her power to live, even if it meant killing entire species. When she was still Sethona, she longed to become a mother. Although it may seem as if she desired to extend her legacy, the 5th Book of Sorrow reveals otherwise. My secrets, carved in my code by Sethona. I want to be a mother. Not because I want to spawn, but because I want a long life. Long enough to make a difference. We have been at sea a year and I am afraid we will die out here. The statue in Savathûn's throne world confirms this dream, that she always wished to be a mother. But like all of her aspirations, it is driven by the need to survive. Why is Savathûn so bent on survival? Well, considering the world she was brought into as a child, her desperate grip on life isn't surprising. Her sister Zero describes the violence of their upbringing in the 1st Book of Sorrow, titled Predators. The Helium Court is near us now. They are of our species, but they are our enemies. Their knights raid us every day. The Helium Drinker Ambassador ate 10 of my sisters as tribute. This is normal. However, I resent it. Savathûn grows up in a world where nobody is safe, in an environment that swallowed 10 of her sisters whole. She must live every day with the dreadful knowledge that she is the world's prey, born to live and die in the dark. How is she to live with this knowledge? There are 2 ways young Sethona can cope with this ever-imposing doom. She can resign herself to misery, closing her eyes and allowing her fate to overwhelm her like the ocean devours a shipwreck, inviting the sand to infest her whole, ensuring she can never float again. Or, she can fight. She can assert her right to exist by clawing through the violence of fundament, screaming that there has to be more than this nightmare of a life. Sethona decides that no matter how many enemies stand in her path, none of them can take away the only thing she has in this world: her own life. They may have taken her sisters, but they will not take her. Considering Savathûn's story as a whole, it is nothing less than a tragedy. She is a product of her circumstances, born into violence and enticed to become it. As a child, she accepted to deal with the devil and became a prisoner of the worm gods, forced to kill with no end, and abandon any hope of becoming her own person. She annihilated 18 species, 306 worlds, and her old self, all in an effort to survive. While I don't condone her actions, I cannot help but think back to the 9th Book of Sorrow, when the worm gods introduced their offer to Sethona, Zero, and Arash. I imagine the worm gods rising out of the murky seas of fundament, in all of their colossal bone-plated glory. I envision their folded jaws opening and screaming, "I am fecund. I am at the beginning and end of lives." I cannot say I would not tremble. If I were Sethona, whose body would soon crumble into dust, I cannot say the words of creatures with such majesty and power would not intrigue me. Although it is easy to demonize Savathûn, if I were put in her position, I find it hard to say that I would choose any differently. Despite her horrific methods, Savathûn only wanted to survive. Every trick, every scheme she performed was driven by a need for more time and more life. Should we condemn her so swiftly? If you were offered a chance at the universe, would you deny your people infinity?